Aloha guys and welcome back to Degree Free. We are your hosts, Ryan and Hannah Maruyama. On this podcast, we share fundamentals we've discovered and the mistakes we've made while self-educating, getting work, building businesses, and making money. We'll tell you how to make it happen. No degree needed.
Welcome back to the podcast, folks. We are super excited to have you here as always. Please feel free to like and subscribe so you do not miss one of these episodes because that would be a bummer. If you want to know how to go about getting a job without a college degree, do feel free to check out our website, which is degreefreenetwork.com. Our guide is up for sale on there. You can grab it if you want a resource that you can use to figure out how to do what we're talking about. And also feel free to listen to the previous episodes because they are chock full of this information as well.
Yeah, let's get into today's episode. Today we're going to be talking about the things you need to know before negotiating. So before you even step into negotiations with a company, there are a bunch of things that you need to figure out first.
Yeah. Number one on the list being deciding what you want before you go in for the interview. Sometimes that can be difficult, but you can establish the things that are a priority to you before you start interviewing in a job. And you really should, because otherwise you're going to have to decide what you want to get out of the job while you're in the interview. And interviewing is hard enough as it is.
Yeah, so this is not something that people ask a lot, actually. This is one of those things that people ask, how do I negotiate? That's the question that we get. And we'll get there. You know what I mean? We'll get there. But you need to know, honestly, we might not even have to get there. We will, but you might not even have to get there because a lot of people don't do this step first, right? You have to know, you have to go through some things by yourself and you have to know these things before you even come to the negotiating table, before you're worried about what to say to that person while you're sitting there with them. Never mind all that right now, right? We're going back to basics. We're going back to identifying the things that you need before we negotiate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
It's like homework that you do before you start interviewing and negotiating with a company to accept a position.
Everybody wants to know about how to negotiate, but this is the stuff that you need to know before you negotiate. This is the stuff you need to know before you get there.
So you can.
Right, exactly.
So I have a few questions that I typically, I do get some questions about how to do this. And I think the ones that, what I get from those people is that there's a few questions that they need to ask themselves first. Number one being, what is important to you in a job, right? Everyone would think that the answer would be money. And it's okay if it's not. If you've watched any of our podcast shows or you've watched our TikTok before, you know that it's our belief that work is about money because that's where you get money from. And today in America now, that is how you make money. That said, you need to decide what's important to you to get out of a job. If that's a learning experience, if that's having that company's name on your resume, if that's making connections at that company, if it's getting experience in a specific industry so you can get a different job. And you have to figure out what is important to you about that job before you go into the negotiating period, because that's going to dictate how you negotiate. That's really important.
Right. And it's identifying what's important to you. Then after that, or while you're doing that, you have to prioritize it,
mm-hmm.
right? There have to be priorities. If pay is the number one thing, okay, pay is the number one thing, then you're not going to budge then you shouldn't budge on pay, right? And if working a 4-day work week is the number one thing on there, then okay, that's a non-negotiable. You're not going to negotiate around that. And even if you don't have, I think the first thing is identifying those non-negotiables, right? And really, really asking yourself what those are.
And there's no right or wrong answer for this. This is largely individual. If, like Ryan was saying, you have to sort through the typical things that a job can offer you, right? If you want money, if you want a certain schedule, if you want to work from home, if you want certain healthcare benefits that they offer, if you want certain stock options or retirement benefits that they offer, you need to know that before you go in for the interview, because you cannot think about that on the fly in the 15 minutes that they're actually talking to you in the interview.
And as with everything else that we say, usually it's what helps is writing it down, right? Just journal it, write it down, piece of paper, Word doc, wherever. And just saying that these things are important to me. And here are the priorities of these things. And if you don't have any non-negotiables, good. Then
Easy.
It's super easy. But it does help to at least rank them still, right? If you're not super concerned about money, or I mean, everybody's concerned about money, but if you're not if you're like, well, I have.
You just want a job.
Right. Or it's like, you don't have to make 80 grand a year, right? And your budget's like, yeah, I could take 65. I could, it's not that big of a deal for me. All right, let's do it, But yeah, if it's like, I have to work from 6 a.m. to 2 o'clock in the afternoon because I got to pick up the kids or whatever it is, like that's not negotiable. It's got to happen. But it's kind of basic, but these are the type of things that like, you got to do this prep work in order to negotiate effectively before you even get to the negotiating table, because these are your terms. These are your terms in negotiation, right?
So I think with these two, the reason it's important to nail down which priorities are where is because you can sacrifice them, as it were, to gain the upper hand in a different part of the negotiation. So if your number one priority is a 4-hour work week, then
4-day work week.
Yeah, I'm sorry. If Tim Ferriss on the brain.
Yeah.
If your number one priority is a 4-day work week, then you have some flexibility, and you can actually, not that I would advise it, but again, it all comes down to priorities. You can sacrifice some of the pay if that's really, really important to you. You can sacrifice some of the benefits if that's really important to you. And that is going to give you more control over the outcome of this negotiation. And you're going to be happier because you are going to determine the terms of this.
Right. Exactly. Knowing what you're willing to accept and what you're not willing to accept is super important.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Is like exactly as you said, like the 4-hour work week is there it is.
Tim Ferriss.
No.
Back at it with the white vans.
Yeah. So 4-day work week is a good example, because like if they're like, well, we can do the 4-day work week, but it's got to be, but maybe you have to be flexible on the days of the week. So maybe instead of you want it to be off on Friday, so you got to work Monday to Thursday, but maybe they're going to give you Monday, or maybe they're going to do split week and we're Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, right? So you have Wednesday off, and you thought you were going to get a 3-day weekend every weekend, but actually you're going to get a 2 days.
That's a really good point. So with the scheduling one, that's a big one, because especially if the reason that you need that schedule is so you can work another job or run a business or watch your kids or work with your partner's schedule, et cetera, you're going to want to make sure that when you explain that this is a non-negotiable, this is the time that you're available. This is the time you can work. If they want you, this is how it looks. And you can be flexible on the other things. It's also good because you can use Ryan's mentioned this in another episode, but it's like laying down cards. And you have these cards, right? And you're playing with a full hand, and you can sacrifice certain cards to keep the one that's most important to you. And so I think that matters.
Yeah. I was using a different way, but yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It probably would have been more accurate if I said something about chess, but I don't play chess. So.
No, but it's like playing cards because you don't keep the card. Anyway. So.
I'm not a gambling man.
So, like, I think with what you are willing to accept and what you aren't willing to accept, I think the key, as with everything else, is just being completely honest with yourself, right? Everybody wants to have their cake and eat it too. Everybody. And And hey, and if you find the job where you can have the best of both worlds, you're like, yeah, I want to make X amount of dollars, and I want a 4-day work week, and I want somebody to watch my kids, and I want a butler. And it's like, yeah, okay, that sounds good. What else would you like? And then you just name it all, and you're like, yeah, it sounds good.
That's
okay.
fantastic. We'll throw a party for you.
It's great.
That's awesome.
That's great.
Yeah.
But assuming that that's not going to happen, you really have to be brutally honest about what it is, which hills you're going to die on, right? And generally speaking, the least or the less amount of hills that are absolute non-negotiables, probably the easier it is to negotiate.
It's strategic thinking. If you have five positions that you have and you can sacrifice 3 of them to keep 2 of them, then do, because these are the 2 that are actually matter to you, not the other ones. But that's why you have to do your own homework before, and you have to know what those things are. So you, 1, don't get caught off guard, and 2, you don't miss your shot to get what you want.
Right.
Because
exactly.
The thing is too, the recruiters and HR people are not against you. They're just trying to get a good deal on you. They're trying to get you for as little as possible. That's their goal, because they're acting in the interest of their company, right? So they're trying to hire you with the least amount of resources possible, because that helps them to meet their bottom line. And so just keeping that in mind, because you can work with them and make it feel like you both won, which you both did. If they get you and you get what you want too, the chances that that's going to be a longer lasting job with good results, I think, is better.
Remember that you can always change. Remember that.
Do you mean from job to job, or do you mean?
No, I mean like within the negotiation, right? So like things happen, you learn things, they learn things, and it's dynamic. I mean, even it's an absolute non-negotiable, it's an absolute non-negotiable. But sometimes the people in front of you are going to be like, no, I need you here 5 days a week. Like, I absolutely need you here 5 days a week, but you love everything else about it, right? And now,
you gotta think.
Yeah, and it's just these aren't rules that are written in stone.
They're more like guidelines than actual rules.
Right. They're just rules of thumb, and you, generally speaking, it helps if you have the non-negotiables. But if you have 5 requirements, if you've figured out that there are 5 things that are important to you, and you've listed them 1 through 5, and the only one is a non-negotiable, quote unquote non-negotiable, but they meet all the other 4, and it's like,
it's a pretty good fit.
Maybe not, right? And it's up to you. It's up to you to decide.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I'm saying. It's all I'm saying is that
only you can know if it's worth it for you.
Right. Exactly. And it's like, do you want to? Is it worth it to have to hire a babysitter for that extra day? Right? Is the money worth it?
In order to have this work and job that interests you, that you like, or whatever.
Whatever the case is.
However it meets your qualification.
Right. And I think the next thing is going to be just like, you got to ask, right? In the negotiation.
That's huge, because I do find a lot of people, especially, man, it's always the young college graduates. They just don't, they're just not taught, but they don't know how to ask for what they want. They get frustrated when a job or a company doesn't give them what they want in a job offer. And I'm like, did you ask for it? And oftentimes they have not. I'm like, they can't read your mind. It's like a relationship. They can't know what's in your brain and then put it on a paper and give it to you on a silver platter, especially if it costs them money. You have to ask for it, because they're not just going to up and give it to you. You have to say, I would like this thing.
And a key to that too is just knowing that once you're in the room, they have their non-negotiables too, right? But the only way that you're going to find out what their non-negotiables are is if you ask.
Right. Because then they'll just say no. And
it can be, just because the job description says 5 days a week, just because the job description says 10 to 4, whatever it is, 10 to 6.
Yeah, whatever the shift is.
Yeah. Just because the job description says that doesn't mean that you can't ask. Just because the job description says range 60 to 80K doesn't mean that if you get in there and you get to the negotiation stage and you've felt like you've pleaded a good case and presented a good case for you to get paid more, that doesn't mean that you can't ask for more. You can ask for whatever you want. If you're like it's a non-negotiable for me to make 6 figures. Non-negotiable. I need 100K and I need benefits, but the thing is says 60 to 80, right? If you felt like you presented a good enough case, and you feel like you can provide value there, just ask for it. They might laugh you out of the room.
Who cares?
Who cares, right? At the end of the day, you're at the same place, right? I mean, you quote unquote wasted some time interviewing, but you got to shoot your shot.
I will say you only learn from those experiences though.
Yeah.
Especially because job hunting, interviewing, and negotiating are, as long as you are, honestly, you're going to use it forever. Even if you're self-employed, it's still valid. It's still useful, because you're going to either be negotiating from the other side of the table too. And so knowing this basic stuff is really just going to help you in life, because almost everything's a negotiation. Like, I don't know who says that. It's I don't know. There's a bunch of big name sales people, CEO type people that say that, but it's true. Like, every time that you interact with another person, it's a bid and an agreement. And so knowing that that's how it works, and especially understanding that two different parties come to the table with different wants for different outcomes. And the only way for them to come to an agreement is to have a discussion and ask each other if these things are acceptable. And so knowing that you are an equal participant in a negotiation, and two, understanding what power you do have in that dynamic is really helpful.
Yeah, definitely. And then like understanding the power dynamic, and understanding that like you have something that they want, right? You have your labor. And as I say all the time, they have a problem. They obviously have a problem, and they're willing to pay money for it.
They need your labor to fix it.
Right. And you need their money.
Yep.
And as long as you understand that they're trying to get a good deal for your labor, and
so are you
on the other side of it. And as long as you understand that, the more that you understand that, and the more that you can see the other person's point of view, I think the better you can maneuver around the situation.
Yeah, because you feel like you understand how much control you have over it.
Yeah, definitely. So this is going to be kind of a quick episode. I think the last thing that I really wanted to talk about was knowing when to walk.
This one is touchy. And I think maybe too, and I'm not trying to be condescending to anybody who's just starting out, but this is knowing when to walk is kind of a risky maneuver if you really need a job, and you really need money and you really need a job. You have less leeway to walk away because you need the money. And so it's a little bit different than someone who's going in with a little bit more experience, a little bit of a financial cushion. It's a little bit different. So deciding when to walk away from a job offer, especially if you need the money, is risky. Yeah,
I think everybody's financial situation is different, and only you can know that, right? And I think generally speaking, when you're first starting out, if you're first starting out, the general advice is to say yes to everything.
Yeah.
Right? Like, just say yes to everything. If you need money, if they're willing to offer you money and you try to negotiate to a higher salary and you get them up a little bit, or you don't get them up, but you need the money, maybe take the job.
Fix your money problem first.
Right. And then also, it's been proven that it's easier to get a job while you're employed.
Yep.
So get a job and then continue to looking for another job.
Yeah.
I know it
continue
sucks.
to look for a job at the exact same rate that you're looking for now.
Right. It sucks because it's a lot of work to look for a job, but that's kind of where we're at, and that's kind of. But if you're not just starting out, or if you have some money on the side and you don't have to, and money is not the end all be all of your situation, then you have to identify the yep. And like I said, those are always going to be your non-negotiables, right? It's going to be whether or not you get the right schedule, or whether or not it's work from home.
How good their education credit is.
Exactly. What kind of benefits they have, what your vacation package, fringe benefits, core benefits, whatever it is.
I think with that too, in order to know when you're willing to walk, you have to be brutally honest with yourself about what your worth is. If you have no experience and you don't have any relevant skills, a relevant skill set, you've been applying for jobs for months and this job offers you a position, I don't know your situation, but it sounds like you don't have the market value yet to turn them down. It sounds like you need to take that job. And I think that that's, while on a very individual level, I think that generally speaking, especially if you're in a financially not in a good place, get yourself out of the corner by earning some money and having current employment on your resume so that when you apply, you're a more attractive candidate on the market and you do have more leverage. But if you have zero leverage, then you need to get some. And the best way to do that is by getting a job.
Right. And then one of the things that I should have touched on earlier and that I wanted to, but thanks for reminding me, this kind of happens before you even apply, but it bears saying here, is like kind of doing research about typical salaries in this range.
And this is a controversial one because everybody and their mother is like, well, you can't find an accurate range online. Okay, sure, maybe, but you have to come up with a range somewhere.
Right.
So just look at 5 different job sites and look at the averages for that job and then just average those together, or just pick what looks like in the middle. There's no right or wrong answer to this. People can get all up in arms about it as much as they want. It's very controversial on TikTok to give out salary ranges for jobs, but you gotta start from, people that are applying for jobs have to start from somewhere.
You need some sort of basis.
Can't just go in with no number.
The thing is too, what's happening, and I see it as a growing trend, is that companies less and less are posting salary ranges.
It's smart on their part, but it's also extremely irritating.
Right. It's very smart and it's very irritating. But yeah, so I think that growing trend of not posting salaries, it makes a lot of sense because then it forces the person to negotiate, right? And it forces me as the interviewee.
Yes, it puts you. It basically sets you back on your heels
As the person interviewing.
As the
interviewee.
Interviewee. Yeah, right. Because intervieweree doesn't make any sense.
So as an interviewee, it makes me battle. It makes me.
It's an uphill battle.
Prove my worth, and but as we said, you got to start. So you got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
You need to have some. You need to go in there knowing a range, and even if like I said,
even if your range is wrong, it doesn't matter.
Right, and even if their job listing does have a range, and if your range is higher than that,
ignore it.
It's fine.
It's a suggestion.
It's fine, right? And you just go there, and then you say that this is what I think I should get paid. And if they can't afford it, they'll tell you, right? Or if they don't want to pay you that money, they'll tell you.
Or if they do, they just will say, okay.
Right, they'll pay you. Right, exactly. It doesn't. It goes both ways. But I think that's just something that you also, in the beginning phases of this, you gotta know what you want, but before that, you kind of have to have a realistic range.
Estimate your market value.
Yeah, exactly. You have to have an estimation of what you're going to be doing, and
is it wrong? Maybe. But you still got to have it.
Right. And obviously, depending on the different roles that you're applying for, because when you're applying for a job, a lot of times, especially when you're first starting out, or if you're switching industries, you're just applying to anything, right? Anything and everything, right? So you could be a marketing director at some firm or whatever, or you could be applying for a customer service position, or you could be applying to a sales position, or you could be applying to a manager's position. And you kind of got to know that maybe in every single role, you're going to get paid a different rate, or the range is going to be different, maybe, and then also the way that you're going to get compensated is going to be different as well. So in the sales role, maybe it's going to be all commission based or small salary. Maybe in the manager role, it's going to be bonuses.
Yeah, heavy salary, heavy bonuses.
Right, or maybe just low salary, heavy bonuses. Right, and then maybe in the customer service role, it's going to be just a salary. Right. Marketing role, it's going to be bonus, whatever. But just kind of having a general layout of the land while you're doing it.
Especially if you have kind of a varied skill set, and this is going to be more for degree-free people because sometimes they have a more wide range of skills than a lot of college graduates do. But if you have for me, I'm a great example. I have pretty hefty marketing chops, but I also have sales experience, but I also have software development experience now. So it's possible that if I were interviewing for a marketing role, but they needed somebody who was, if they needed somebody who was in sales and I was willing to entertain that position and they were like, you know what, I think you're a better position for this sales role, you would have wanted to do your research before, because if they pivot while you're in the interview, now you're back on your heels again because they've changed what you're talking about. And that does sometimes happen. Especially if you're reaching out or you're applying for multiple different roles.
Yeah, definitely. And then just having these numbers or having your non-negotiables in general, doing this prep is really going to make it a lot easier. When you do get that, if they're like, yeah, maybe we actually have 2 openings. We're just going to fuse these together and we're going to make your role here that, and then you're like, oh crap. And then you have to price that. But if you have a good idea, then, you can, if you have a good idea of the pricing of what you're willing to take and what you're willing to not take about as far as salaries or work schedules or whatever it is else that we talked about, at least you're prepared, at least a little bit. But yeah, that was a good one. I think we covered it all. That was probably one of our quickest episodes.
Mm-hmm. But this is simple stuff, guys, but it's really important at the same time.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is like you said, we always get the question about how to negotiate, and we can get to that.
Yeah, but the how of the here's the tricks for this is more important, I think, than that.
I agree.
Because you got to know what you're negotiating about.
I agree. And it's good to know how to sell yourself, and it's good to know different mental biases or different marketing and sales tactics in order to negotiate harder and into a higher role or a better paying position or whatever
you're happier with. Win-win.
The way that you do it is obviously super important, obviously. But before you get there, you got to figure out what it is that you want so that you know what you're negotiating for.
Yeah. You can't get what you don't even know you want.
Right. Exactly. And so that's what this episode's about. Identifying what's important to you, prioritizing it, figuring out what is non-negotiable, right? Figuring out what you can budge on, what you can't budge on. For 4-day work week, work from home, hybrid, pay, fringe benefits, core benefits,
stock options,
you name it, whatever it is.
PTO,
if you need pay time off, if you want your freaking if you want to bring your dog work Fridays or something like that, you know what I mean? Okay.
It's a thing.
Yeah, sure.
If you want it,
if that's what you want. Right, exactly. And then know what you're willing to accept, knowing which hills that you're willing to die on. And
what things you're willing to sacrifice to get the things that are most important.
Right, exactly. Knowing when to walk away, huge.
Mm-hmm.
Having a salary range before you sit down.
You have to. People just get so up in arms about, oh, it's not accurate. It doesn't matter, man. People don't know. Right. They got to make a guess.
Right. It
doesn't matter if you're wrong, by the way. It doesn't matter if you're wrong. It doesn't matter if that's really high to them. That's okay. It's okay. You can come down.
And then the biggest one is that you got to ask.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean,
they're not going to give it to you on a silver platter. That's not how the world works.
Right. And then if they do, then awesome, right?
Fantastic.
Right. But before they give you what you want, you have to let them know what you want.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And if you say, I want to make this much money, I want to work from this time to this time on these days, and I want these benefits. And they're just like, yeah, we provide all of that. Right on. Sounds good. When do I start? I think that pretty much covers it.
Yeah, I think so. If you are wondering how to do the things all before this, which is how to figure out how to find a job, how to figure out what you need to know, how to go about applying, how to fix your resume, all that good stuff, that is in our guide, which you can get on our website, which is degreefreenetwork.com. It's how to get a job without a college degree. And it's going to teach you everything you need to know. Be sure to like and subscribe, folks, because you don't want to miss our next episode.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, drop us an email, contact@degreefreenetwork.com. Let us know if you guys have any questions. Maybe we'll plan a podcast episode around it. If you guys like this show and you guys made it this far, if you guys can consider leaving us a review, Apple Podcasts or anywhere you get your podcast, or just giving us a thumbs up on YouTube. That really helps to get the message out. Yeah. Until next time, guys. Aloha.